Okay, hello everybody. This is going to be a pretty quick video, and I'm going to show you the end-to-end process for creating 360-degree 3D VR video, including Cinema 4D and After Effects. Excuse me. So let's get started. Here in Cinema 4D, I just have a basic scene set up. This is nothing special, just a cloner and some cubes and a terrain object. It can obviously be whatever you want your scene to be. I'm mostly just going to be going over the camera rig that you need, which is very simple to set up, and then the process of rendering it out and bringing it into After Effects and setting it up for 3D in a format that YouTube recognizes as 3D, with a few key steps that you're going to want to take note of. So in our scene here, let's create first a sphere. Set the radius of the sphere to something like 3. Just kind of move it to wherever you want in your scene. Going to go down here and create a new material and drag that onto your sphere. And then right click on that sphere, Cinema 4D tags, bake texture tag. Then down here, what you're going to want to do is go through all of these and change some settings. So first, we'll deal with that in a second actually. So before I get started on this, the basic thing we're going to be doing is taking the 360-degree image that this sphere reflects and baking that into an image. And because it's a sphere, it sees everything around it. That's the same as sort of like a 360-degree camera. And what this does is this tag takes that texture and bakes it into an image or a series of images. So starting in this Details tab here, just adjust the start time. This will be variable based on what your scene is. So here we'll just do 1 to 100 maybe. Sorry. Set the frame rate to whatever your frame rate is. Usually 30 is what it's going to be. Moving on to the Options tag here, what we want is to just check this reflection box. And it actually doesn't matter if the material on here is reflective or not. It just has to have any material. A lot of other tutorials will tell you to make the material reflective and have you do a lot of things with the material. It actually doesn't matter at all. What we do need to do, though, is go into this Details tag and drag this down into here. Otherwise it won't work. Back in the options thing, I think we have everything we need selected or set. In the tag, go ahead and set a file name. I'm just going to save it to my desktop as scene, name it whatever you want. Change this to, I think a PNG sequence is just fine. And for this, this can be technically whatever you want it to be, but generally you want the width to be twice the height. And for 360 VR, you actually want it to be a very high resolution. 4K is kind of the minimum that looks okay playing on YouTube, because it's taking this whole image and stretching it around a sphere. So it's it gets stretched out. It's not, you don't see that many pixels on the screen all the time, so it has to be very high resolution. So 4096 by 2048, you can have it whatever you want, but generally, ideally, you want this to be twice that number. Super sampling, let's set that to 2. What this is actually anti-aliasing. It doesn't use the anti-aliasing for the scene that you would go in here normally and set, so this doesn't actually matter. So set that to 2. This really very heavily impacts the render time, so I found that 2 is not perfect, but it's not bad either. And that, changing it to 3 really affects the render time. So I found that 2 was very an acceptable thing to do. So that is one sphere, but we wanted to do 3D. If you're just doing 2D, then you can just do that one sphere and do what I'm about to do in a minute here in terms of exporting it. But since we want 3D, what we want to do is zoom in. I just pushed the O key, which centers the object in the frame. We want to duplicate that, so I'm going to push Command on Mac, Control on PC, Command C, Command V to duplicate that object, and then just move it over about 10 centimeters. And that's about the distance apart that your eyes are. You know what, on second thought, I'm going to make these 2 centimeters each. I don't know if it makes a difference, but it just seems a little more natural. to me. So let's name let's name this one. Oops. Left eye. Name this one right eye. Okay. And then go up to create object, null object, and just drag it up here so it's kind of more or less in the same position as these guys. Drag it in between. What this is going to be is kind of a parent control, so we can move both eyes at once if we wanted to animate the camera. So just select these and make it a child of the null. Just call this parent or camera mover, whatever you want to name it. So now when we move that, we're able to move that. Basic Cinema 4D stuff. If you wanted to, you animate this null, and that's essentially the same as animating the camera in the scene. Okay. So we have these two tags here. What you want to go to do is actually name this one left underscore whatever you want, and go into this other one and name it right underscore whatever you want. And now what you would do is go into this options tag and then hit bake. And this is actually going to be a very long process. I think this is a little bit less efficient than the normal camera in Cinema 4D. So you're in for a little bit of a wait probably. Actually, just one more thing I'd like to add here before you export that image. So you don't want these spheres appearing in the reflection of the other sphere or reflected in objects in your scene if you have reflective objects. So what you need to do is right-click on one of these, Cinema 4D tags, compositing, and uncheck pretty much everything here. We don't want it seen by GI, we don't want it casting shadows or be seen in reflections, nothing like that. Do that and then duplicate it by either holding down Command or Control and dragging it to the other object. And that is all you need to do. Okay, so now we're in After Effects. I have already imported my image sequences. I actually just rendered out one image from each eye, so I didn't have to do the full sequence, but it would be essentially the same thing. These would just be sequences for you instead of single images. So I'm going to create a new composition. You want this to be square in the same width and height as the largest dimension in your VR video. So in that case, it's 4096 by 4096. We'll make sure it matches our frame rate and click OK. So we now have our composition. What you want to do now is drag your left eye to the top and your right eye to the bottom. As a little bit of an aside here, a drawback to exporting this in this way and the reflection is that you can't actually have transparency. A little bit of a way to get around that. So let's just say we wanted a solid background that's, dark blue or something. Let's go ahead and move that to the back. What we need to do is set the blending mode on these to screen, and it's not absolutely perfect, but if you're in a pinch, it's an okay way to do it. You can also use the key light plugin in effects keying to get rid of that black as well potentially. So there are ways to do it. So I am just mine's a still thing; it's not animated, but I am going to, now this is actually important that we export this in Adobe Media Encoder and not After Effects itself because it has some VR things. It's going to add some metadata to the video that we're not able to do just in After Effects. And YouTube actually has a little downloadable tool that you're able to use, which I can put a link for that in the description. But it's just easier to do it in Adobe Media Encoder, in my opinion. So I'm going to go to Composition, add to Adobe Media Encoder queue, and with any luck, Adobe Media Encoder will open. A little bit of a wait. Okay, so we're now in Adobe Media Encoder. It was a little bit of a wait, so don't worry if it takes a bit of time on your system. And our composition from After Effects has been added in here. So to change some settings, we'll click on this thing right here. It'll take a second to connect to the After Effects project. Okay, so we now have a window here, excuse me, a window here that is the contents of our After Effects project. We'll just make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so we have our frame here. I'm just going to go through some of the settings that are good. H.264 is good. H.265 I've actually found is pretty great, so I'm going to use that actually. You'll set this to wherever you want to save it to. If you have audio, have that checked. Definitely you want the video. Okay, sorry, I had to mess around there for a second. If some of these things are grayed out for you, you just need to uncheck these boxes over here. It's not exactly readily apparent. But so for the dimensions, you want to uncheck that box and change it to 4096 by 4096, and if they're locked together, they should change together. I like to check this. I'm not actually sure what it does, but I don't think it impacts the render time that much. The bitrate, in my opinion, this is a little bit low, so maybe change it to something like 12 and 15. So we have that. Go ahead and you've already set where you want to save the file to. Click. One very essential thing. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, VR video. Video is VR, and then frame layout. Change that to over under. And what this does is it adds a little bit of metadata to the video, and players like YouTube actually read this and realize this is a VR video, and it's meant to be displayed in 3D. Very, very, very essential step. So we'll click OK. Yeah, if you're using H.265, it's okay. Just click OK. It'll download the codec for you. And then click Go. So that should be all you need to do. When you go to upload this video to YouTube, it will tell you that, or it'll recognize that it's a 3D VR video, and everything should be fine. And it may not actually recognize that it's a VR video if you don't do that last step where you check video is VR. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope I didn't say too much. I told my girlfriend to slap me in the face every time I said that, but she refused to do it. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Bye-bye.